Welcome back to Game Warp. I'm Kim, and joined with me as always is my co-host Elwood Jones. How's it going?
It's going good. It's exciting again that we've not only are doing another episode, but the fact we're joined again by another special guest for this episode. So, do you want to, without further ado, do you want to introduce who we have on the show today, Kim?
Yeah, actually, so as all of you know, I'm actually the mobile games person on that moment in, and I do a lot of gaming reviews on mobile games. And when I went to Montreal Comic Con, the first game I tried out was this puzzle kind of game called Rise of Balloons. And today we're really lucky because our special guest is from Mirum Studios, and they're the developer of Rise of Balloons. Welcome to the show, Pierre Olivier.
Hey, thanks. I'm going great, and you?
Yeah, we're doing good. So I just wanted to, how about talk to our viewers and listeners and tell us a little about yourself and your background in gaming and like what brought you into the gaming industry, or did you start with gaming?
Well, actually, I started with gaming when I was a tester at Beanox, a local studio, and I really hated the industry because I ended up working on games that were pretty boring to me, and the developers would not listen to any advice or anything. So I decided to just give up and go into the web industry as I am a programmer. So I thought that would be easier. And it ended up being much easier and even more boring. So I decided to team up with one of my friends 2 years later and start up Mirum Studio. So that's about what happened. We decided to try and do something different, and that something different ended up being Rise of Balloons.
Yeah, it's certainly something different. Looking at the game, it does look absolutely stunning, and especially as this is a mobile game. I love the fact that just the presentation of the game, it could be easily compared to easily like a AAA or an independent game for the console. So I love the fact that it's a mobile game and yet it hasn't sort of slipped in the production standards. But before we obviously get into the game, did you classify yourself as being a gamer before, or was it just the joy of making things that sort of brought you into the games industry?
Actually, my parents told me once that when they bought me a Nintendo 64 when I was like 8 years old, I loved it so much that they said, well, if one day you end up working in that industry, you won't have asked yourself that question for very long. You've known forever that you wanted to work in games. And that's pretty much true. I've always been a gamer. I love it.
Okay.
And I'm glad that I get to be a part of making games.
You obviously said that the N64 was your starting console. What would you say were sort of like those key early titles for yourself? Because we always love to hear about people's retro gaming experiences here on the show.
I think the first game I played was Donkey Kong 64. I have fond memories of that one. And of course, Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
That was another great one. And my personal favorite of all time, I'd say, is Super Smash Bros. I'm
Ooh.
still playing to this day.
So you like all these retro games. I mean, is there a part of that is brought into you developing games right now and the style you choose?
Well, of course, there is a part of it that comes from my personality and what I love from games. I love when games don't hold your hand too much. My partner doesn't like that too much because sometimes I'm too hard with our players. So I need to get used to it and find the middle ground. But that's the main thing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you should obviously say about not wanting to hold the hands of players. So certainly while we've been doing the playtesting before can do this interview, it's safe to say that Rise of the Balloons doesn't hold your hand in any way. This is a very taxing game. It's perhaps not up there in like the sadistic levels of like Dark Souls, but this is certainly a challenging game nonetheless. And it's so bizarre when you have a game that is looks the way that Rise of the Balloons does, and it sort of hides beneath the surface this like fiendish challenge that, like Super Meat Boy, just makes you want to continue playing because you just don't want to give up. You want to stay with the game. You want to see what happens next. But certainly the challenge is certainly there with this one for sure.
Yeah, it was really right before the show. I was just talking to Elwood about how I was stuck on the second part, like with the blue balloons, and I was stuck there and I couldn't figure it out. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a breather and I'm gonna come back.
I'm glad you enjoy it. We thought about including some hints in the game, like some kind of currency that would let you buy hints, but that felt a little bit too free to play, pay to win ish,
Yeah.
and we decided to instead allow players to not complete all puzzles, so they could just give up on one and come back later and keep playing the other puzzles. And surprisingly, everybody that tells me that they get stuck on a puzzle, they say, yeah, I know, I can skip it, but I don't want to. I just want to clear them all. So I'm like, you're lost.
Obviously, the story of Rise of the Balloons, we have this Depression era sort of setting in this very industrial-like city, and the fact that you're using balloons to sort of raise morale and bring life and happiness back to the city. I mean, what inspired this story for Rise of the Balloons? Because these two things you would never think to go together. The idea of bringing happiness back to this sort of like downtrodden city through the use of balloons. It's such a unique idea. I'd love to know what the inspiration was for this.
Well, it came mostly from my partner and one of his friends who he was talking with before I got into the project. It was in the very early stages of the project, so I was there almost all the way through, but still, it began before me. And personally, what I understood from the concept is that both me and my partner, we were kind of bored with our previous jobs. We didn't like it. We did not have fun. We felt like we could be doing that job for the rest of our lives and we would not be proud about it. So we kind of used this feeling and put it in the game. So in my head, at least, the characters in the game who are depressed are on the same path that we were before doing our making our studio. They were not happy with their life and not really sure what to do about it. And here comes along the little girl who says, "Hey, you just have to pull yourself up and be happy. Here's a balloon that should cheer you up." So it's a little bit convoluted, but I think that's the root of the concept.
Yeah.
That's actually really nice because in just like explaining the game of how Rise of Balloons came to be, you kind of also touched on how Mirum Studios came to be. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm curious is because like there are so many indie game companies and there are a lot of mobile games out there, mobile companies and all that. Like the teams I'm always interested in how many people are on the team because nowadays there's just so many projects. It's like a one man show or like it's like the smaller teams have seem to have better communication. How many people are in Mirum Studios?
It depends on the definition of team. On Rise of Balloons, me and my partner, we are two programmers. So we're not the one who drew up the characters and the environment. We couldn't ever do that. So we hired professional artists who did a spectacular job. We hired someone to do the music and the sound effects. And lastly, my twin brother, actually, who's have a few jobs in game testing, he helped us test the game and make sure there wasn't too many problems. So that adds up to 5, but we were only me and Vincent, my partner, working full time for a whole year. The others were in and out.
Just to obviously mention about the art style, you said that you had artists come in and draw it, and I love the fact that Rise of the Balloons, it's joining this ever-growing trend of games being drawn with this hand-drawn style. We saw it in things such as like Schoolgirls, Guilty Gear, Blaze Blue. There's a number of indie games such as Hamster Parkour, again, which is using that hand-drawn style. What was it that made you want to go with the hand-drawn sort of animated style over like a more sort of pixel-based style?
I'm going to be totally honest with you. When we started the project, we had no idea what we wanted. We just wanted it to look sad and depressing. That we knew so that much. So we told our artists, hey, enjoy it, do whatever you feel like doing, and we'll see how it goes from there. And we just loved our hand drawing.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened mostly.
Okay. It certainly works with the game.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's such refreshing, especially when you're looking at this depression sort of era sort of setting, especially on industrial scapes. Most of the time we've seen them, it's been in normally these sort of most sort of first person sort of shooters. So to see it transferred over, and I think it's really sort of the first time since sort of like Abe's Odyssey that we've seen an industrial setting being used for a puzzle game. Certainly everything else that I've seen sort of to use this setting has always been like a first person shooter. It's always been like a sort of 3D adventure game. So it's nice to see it move back onto a 2D setting. More so, especially with the art style, because it is absolutely stunning, as we've said already, and it perfectly suits this bizarrely enchanting game. The idea of the fact that you've got this little girl in a balloon, and she's basically cheering people up by giving them balloons. She's not battling people. She's using balloons to solve problems and just handing out balloons to raise morale. And I think it's so touching, and it's another thing I love about independent games is the fact that it's not always about killing things or vanquishing evil. It's the fact you can have something as simple as giving someone a balloon and it still be an absolutely satisfying mechanic. Can we ask who the artist was that worked on the game?
Yeah, her artist name is EM, 2 letters.
Yep.
She's worked on lots of I got the French name, but comic books.
Okay.
She did a few of her own, a few with other people. She has a Facebook page that I can give you.
Yeah,
So
we
you
can put it in
link.
the description below.
Yeah, she'll enjoy the visibility, I think.
I think that was the first thing that drew me to the game when I was at Montreal Comic Con. Obviously, it was the first game, and I personally, this was the first Comic Con where I was actually trying to get someone to do an interview with me, and I got to your booth, and the both of your enthusiasm was amazing, and I was just so happy, and you taught me how to play the game, and I was embarrassingly bad. Let's just be honest with that.
I don't know.
Like the art style was definitely what drew me because it was so like you said, it was kind of depressing kind of mood, and then there's like this red balloon that kind of shines out of everything. So I think right now we can talk about Rise of the Balloons now that we know a little bit more about you and Mirum Studios. How about you tell us a little about the gameplay mechanics and maybe some of the features to highlight in this game?
To begin, I like to talk about the controls. We wanted to make sure that we had no virtual buttons, except for, of course, the pause button. But everything that you had to do as a player, we wanted it to be easy and convenient and intuitive. And having to press on arrow buttons was not. So we thought that the balloons who were shiny, who would pop out, they would be easily noticeable by the players. They made great buttons. They're just like buttons that float around the screen, and touching them and moving them around feels normal to players. So that's one of our biggest achievement, I think. Um, Otherwise, the all the special balloons, what they do, I think we managed to do a few original stuff. If you haven't seen the pink balloons yet, I think you'll love them. They are our biggest treat for players. Don't want to say too much though, but
Well,
definitely go and play level 2-1, I think.
how many levels is there an end to this game, or how many levels are currently available if not?
There are 16 levels. The last one is a little bit special, so I don't want to say too much about it, but we really wanted to make a finite story. We didn't want it to go on forever and forever because it wouldn't feel as much as a story. In other words, you could say that we tried to make some sort of fairy tale with the game, since there's some kind of moral throughout the game. So yeah, that's why we decided to do only a certain amount of levels. We might add more in the future, but the whole experience is this story, these 16 levels.
Okay. And I mean, is there any specific audience that you're targeting with this game? 'Cause it's certainly looking at the game, and it looks like it could obviously appeal to a wide range of people, not only people who like independent games, who like mobile games, but those who like puzzle games, and particularly taxing puzzle games. I think this is something that delivers in spades in that respect. So, I mean, when you started making the game, when you're developing, were you sort of aiming for a particular audience? It was like, okay, we're going to target this group, or was it just the idea of putting the game out there and letting it find its own audience?
That's a little bit of a tricky question because we've been told by different people, oh, your target audience is definitely this or definitely that. And we were like, that's not what we were aiming for at all, but I guess we'll see. What we were aiming for from the start was people our age who were kind of starting their first job, not really sure what they were going to do with their life, and maybe scared, maybe bored with it. Who knows? Of course, the balloons aspect can be quite attractive for younger children, but the game might be too hard for these players. So yeah, I'd say the game is more accurately aimed at people from 16, 25 years old who want to try something different, who already like games, because as you said earlier, we're not holding the hands of the player. So you have to already know your way around a game and have certain reflexes to properly enjoy the game.
Is this sort of going to be an ongoing template for Mirum Studios, that you're going to produce these games that aren't there to hold the hands of the players, that are there to provide a more taxing experience? I know you've already said that you want to stray away from sort of the pay-to-play sort of model that most mobile games will use, where they're encouraging people to invest real money to sort of move ahead in the games by putting up these sort of walls. So this idea of not holding the player's hands, providing a real sort of challenge for the player, is this sort of the model really going forward for Mirum Studios? Or is it just sort of specifically for this game that you decided, okay, we're just going to make it this way?
Well, you kind of said two things. So we really don't want to make any pay-to-win games. I guess that's something you guys hear a lot from indie developers. We really don't like that business model. Pay-to-win stinks
Yeah.
for us. But for the no hand-holding, no, that's not something that we necessarily want to do every time. It felt kind of right for this game. Since it's a puzzle game, we thought that it would be logical for the players to kind of have to think about the whole thing, not just have big instructions at the beginning and then boom, you're on your own, you have to find the puzzle solutions. We've been thinking about a few projects that we would like to work on next. They don't necessarily have to be as hard as Rise of Balloons.
Are you gonna be keeping on the, like, I know you have projects and probably, you don't want to talk about those until they're a little bit more developed, but are you planning to on staying on the path of puzzle games, or is it gonna be a different genre of games?
As my first game as a game designer, I liked making a puzzle game because it meant having to really get in the mind of the people who were playing it and trying to trick them. So that was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of hard work. And looking back on it, I'm not sure it was worth the time investment as starting my game studio. I think it was a little bit too long. Maybe it was just the lack of experience. Maybe it was the genre. I'm not sure yet, but our next games might be a little bit more action games. Because what one thing we noticed with Rise of Balloons is when we showed it to people, they would not always like it at first. Most of the some people did. Some people looked at it and were like, I'm not sure. I don't really understand what's the point. And then if we forced them because they were our friends and we needed playtesters. They eventually loved it, but we want to aim for something that's a little bit more love at first sight. And action games tend to help with this, I think.
Yeah. I have to obviously ask at the moment, obviously being a mobile-based company at the moment with the games you're producing, is there a plan to move to consoles eventually, or is it so your idea at the moment just to stay particularly with the mobile market?
We chose the mobile market for Rise of Balloons because, again, since it was our first game, we wanted to be sure to be able to publish it. We had no clue how publishing platforms worked on Steam, on consoles, or on mobile, but we knew that on mobile you were certain that your game ended up on the market someday.
Yeah.
So that's why we chose it. For our next games, I think they're going to be PC because developing on console is expensive, and on PC it's not. So it's not certain, but we're probably going to be developing on PC from now on.
Via Steam or
Yeah, probably via Steam and other such platforms. We at the Comic Con we met Imperial Games, so shout out to them. They were really nice with us, and I think they sell games, PC games for cheap. So
okay.
we might deal with them.
Okay. Imperial Games, what were they? They were showing, I think what it wasn't the VR one, was it?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you ask them or if you remember, but the VR game, it's not theirs. They just needed an attraction to bring people to their stand and talk to us, and then they could say, "Hey, by the way, we sell games. We're sometimes cheaper than Steam, so come have a look."
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. Never hurts to have something shiny to to attract people over.
yeah. We were kind of jealous of their lineup, of their waiting line.
I
You
mean,
had a really big waiting line too, so I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah. Well, I didn't see it from where I was sitting. I was just seeing loads and loads of people everywhere, and it was kind of dizzying. But yeah, I think we had a lot of people.
you obviously mentioned about the use of Steam. I mean, do you feel personally that Steam has really sort of opened the market for PC gaming, the way that things such as the PlayStation Store, Xbox Live Marketplace has done for its independent games with things such as, if we look back at the 360, with games such as like Castle Crashers and Fat Princess, games that probably would have been much overlooked if they had gone sort of like an in-store release, but because of having the platform of, for example, the Xbox Live Marketplace, they were able to get out there and through word of mouth, obviously, get more gamers. Do you feel that for the PC gaming, that Steam is really sort of providing that same thing for the PC gamers that we obviously the console gamers get from their sort of individual marketplaces?
From my point of view, Steam is a good platform to aim for because it's definitely easier to publish on Steam than on a console because you need the dev kit and sometimes you need to speak with the console owner and that can be pretty tough. But I am under the impression that if you want to publish a game on Steam, on PC, you do your marketing, you go to conventions, to PAX, to whatever, and there you might meet someone from Nintendo or someone from Sony that will help you get on the other consoles. So I guess Steam is, personally, I'm a PC gamer mostly, so I really love Steam, but for game developers in general, I feel like it's a good platform to aim for, and it might end up opening up more possibilities.
Yeah, Steam is always a bad temptation, especially if you just got your paycheck in. That you can easily go on Steam and like lose half of it just looking at independent games because of, as you said, a lot of the games, especially independent games, are so cheap. So before you know it, you've racked up 12 games and half your paycheck's disappeared. So
Yeah.
But there's also one thing about Steam. I actually was watching a gameplay of from a YouTuber. I think it was just yesterday, and they were having a talk about they were talking about how like Steam used to be like the standard of like it's just a batch of really really good games, and then Now it seems like there's a lot of like, really subpar games that kind of sneak in and get greenlit. And I don't know. I mean, how would I guess how would you differentiate? Like, how would you stand out in that market if that was the case?
That's a good question because we did not really stand out on the mobile market, which is kind of what you described, but worse. There are way more low quality games on the mobile market, mostly because people tend to publish a game that they did for a school project or such a thing. So I know for a fact that Rise of Balloons, 1 week after being published, was still nowhere to be found when you typed Rise of Balloons on the search engine on the Android store
Mhm.
because there was some other game that some guy did for a school project. It was called Balloon Rise, and it was definitely not equal in quality to our game because it was a school project, you know. But yeah, I think that the biggest problem is that different platforms, so that's iOS store, that's Android store, that's Steam, I think pretty much all of them lack a really good search engine. If they had that, it would be much easier for us developers to target the audience that we want. And right now, you have to learn the cheat codes, learn the what keywords are less used or what keywords are more used, but don't have that many games attached to it. And that's kind of weird because I guess Steam wants to sell the games people want.
Yeah.
So that's weird. Yeah. I hope this gets changed in the future.
Yeah. I mean, just obviously on the subject of fan games, really. Recently, we saw the project AM2R, the fan remake of Metroid 2: The Return of Samus, came out and was pulled basically in a number of days by Nintendo. This was a fan project that was about 6 years in the making, and it was to celebrate the anniversary of Metroid 2. What's your sort of feelings on the fan game market? The fact that we have fans obviously putting out things like we saw the Destiny 2D side scroller that came out. I believe it's Project Jaguar. And these games sort of come out often without licensing from the actual companies, and a lot of the times they get pulled. I mean, do you have any sort of particular feelings on people who are obviously going out and making sort of fan game versions of classic games?
Personally, I love them. I've been playing, I think it's called Poke MMO for a while. I stopped now, but I did play that game for a little while. It's a fan-made game of Pokemon, and you can play with your friends and see them, I think, in real time on your screen. So that was great, and Nintendo never did that. And the game was free, so it wasn't stealing any sales from
Yeah,
Nintendo, and it was an old. An old looking Pokemon game. So I I don't think that it was stealing anything from Nintendo, you know. Other than that, as long as fan made games stay free, I don't see what's wrong with them. I understand the whole thing that hey, it's my IP, but hey, they're talking about your IP. People are enjoying your IP, so cheer up. It's cool. That's my opinion, I think. For now, it might change the future.
as firm supporters of Team Yellow here on the show for Pokemon Go, we were still holding out that the South Park boys or someone would make a fan version of Chim Pokemon, the South Park's version of
Yeah.
for Pokemon. But sadly, it's yet to happen. We've heard the Harry Potter version of Pokemon Go is coming out, and I don't. I think there's about 4 people excited about that. But yeah, it was kind of
Maybe four
frustrating.
people.
It was kind of it was it was kind of upsetting to see this stunning game like come out and then disappear in 2 days. And I kind of feel for the developer, the guy who spent like 6 years making this game to share with everyone, and then it suddenly gets pulled like that. So it's always interesting to obviously hear someone who works in the industry and obviously their feelings, because obviously you've come from a more sort of business side, because obviously you're in this to, I assume, to obviously make profit and succeed and have a career in this industry. So it's always interesting to see people who work in the industry's feelings on fan games being out there. So
Like, how would we find Mirum Studios, Rise of the Balloons? What would be like you can put in like where we can find you?
We have a Facebook page. Mirum Studio, that easy enough to find. We have a website for the studio if anybody's interested to hire us for contract work. We do that, and there's a website especially for Rise of Balloons. If you don't want to look for the game on the mobile platforms, you can click on the link on our website and it will go download it for you directly. So that's where you can find us. We're on Twitter too, but neither me or my partner ever really understood how Twitter works. So we're not really active on that. We try to, but it's a learning curve, steep learning curve.
Yeah, it's a sort of necessary evil that you have to.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to get used to Twitter, but that 150 characters, I just too old. I don't understand these kids who like, yeah, 150 characters, that's fine. And then when I see what they're typing, it doesn't even look like English. But
You
that's
just
just
have
my
to acronym everything, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my old man grumbling right there for you.
So this wraps up the episode. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedbacks, any recommendations, anything like that. Head over to our home base at momentin.com to read more gaming reviews and news bits. To get gaming news and releases every single day, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at Game Warp Podcast. To listen to us on the go, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Podomatic. Links are all in the description card above or in the box below. So before we leave, I definitely like to thank Pierre Olivier for joining us today and sharing some insight on the mobile gaming market and talking about his game Rise of Balloons.
It was my pleasure. It was fun. Yay!
And so that's the end of this episode. Thanks again for listening. Bye.